to their elders, past, present and emerging. I know that we've got a few people in the gallery, so in the case of an emergency, the exit procedure is through the open double doors to your left to the exit door, and wait for further instructions beside the all-inclusive playground, I would suggest. Public forum, we have no speakers in public forum today. So the next item I'd mention is the fact that this meeting is being streamed live, recorded and published in accordance with Council's live streaming in Council meeting policy. To those present in the gallery today, by attending a public meeting of the Council, you are consenting to your image, voice and comments being recorded and published. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image and comments will form part of the live stream and recording. The Chair and/or the General Manager have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and/or unacceptable behaviour and/or comments. As I stated, today's meeting is being streamed live in accordance with Council's policy and placed on Council's website. Item 4, apologies and applications for leave of absence. We have a request for a leave of absence from Councillor Tuckerman and an apology from Councillor Manchester. So could I have someone like to move that leave of absence from Councillor Tuckerman and accept the apology of Councillor Manchester? Move Councillor Horton. Seconded Councillor O'Connor. All those in favour? Aye. Thank you, councillors. I'd ask everyone to be upstanding, please, for the expressions of sympathy. I'd ask that we have a moment's silence, please, for the following: Margaret Kite, Ina Henry, William Burke, Francis Delbo, Larry McDonald, Kim Smith, Donald Hancock, Vincent Rose, Keith Notes, Blanche Owl, Mary Kemp, Robert Breyer, Leslie Murphy. Thank you. Item 6 on the agenda, councillors, is the confirmation of the minutes for Hilltops Council Ordinary Meeting 29 January. Do I have a mover for the recommendation?
I'll move it with a question.
Move Councillor Armstrong. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Councillor Horton, thank you. Councillor Armstrong has a question in regard to the minutes.
Just in regard to resolution 11 of 20, there was in that resolution there was advice that there would be a report back to council regarding the standpipe or potential standpipe at BOOROWA. I know later on in the business paper we've got a report with a recommendation, but there's no report in regard to the potential standpipe. We need that information, I believe, before we can make that decision.
I would suggest that we would deal with that when that matter arises, but thanks for pointing that out, Councillor Armstrong. Other than the question on the in regard to the minutes, which will be dealt with later, if everyone's happy that that's a true and accurate report, I have a move and a seconder. I'll put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Again. So, boy, thank you, councillors. Item 6.1 is the confirmation of the extraordinary meeting held 10th of February. Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor Horton, seconded Councillor Armstrong, thank you. Everyone's happy with that? All those in favour?
Aye.
So be it, thank you. Takes me to item 7, disclosures of interest. Do we have any disclosures of interest in regard to the business paper tonight, councillors? I take that as no disclosures of interest, thank you. A mayoral minute, there's none. The Mayor's report is there in front of you, councillors. Happy to take any questions in regard to it. I need someone to move and second that report be accepted. Move Councillor Horton, seconded Councillor Walker. Thank you. Question, Councillor Walker.
Who's involved with the meeting on the 26th of February? Meeting with Schools Infrastructure New South Wales. Who's involved with that?
That was today. That was a PRG meeting held at the high school with all the representatives of the PRG, minus myself today. I couldn't make that meeting, and it's there at the last moment. Today, the PRG meeting dealt with the pre-works that have been done on the school ground. So that's who was involved in that. Staff attend. The Director, Osland, attended that meeting today.
Who does it? Council staff?
Beg your pardon?
Did you say council staff attend that?
That council staff and myself.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That was number 17, PRG meeting number 17, I believe, was held today.
Just further to that, Mr Mayor, where are we at with the rest of the project in terms of the library itself?
With the joint use library, talk to it now, happy. The deed and the lease was signed last week, sent back to our legal people to double check off, and it was handed to Department of Education's legal people 2 days ago. I had a phone call from Marty Smith, who was to meet with me today, and that's why I didn't attend the meeting. He couldn't make it either, so to talk about some designs on the outside of the building and the entrance, more it was about. So that's where that's up to. So now it's with Schools Infrastructure Departments for them to go back over, and they want to go out to tender. That's the process now that's been signed off, is to go to tender. Originally, I believe they were hoping to have a 3-month tender process to try and encourage and get the best results they could out of it. I'm not too sure if they're still keeping that timeline, but that was the last correspondence I'd had with them. There was a bit of a technical hiccup a fortnight ago when there was some late changes made to the lease arrangements that were sent through to us that I spoke to you about. It was rejected and it was rectified, and it went back to being the original paperwork that was sent to us, and so it was signed off. So that's where it sits at the moment. And all the work that's been done up there now is all to do with high school work. There's nothing being done with the other project yet. Even though the community, and you can't blame the community, I suppose, thinking, oh, it started. But it hasn't started. The work being done is all high school work. So any other questions in regard to the Mayor's report? If not, put that, be accepted. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Leads me to councillors' reports and meetings attended. And Councillors Horton has got, I'll go around the table. Councillor Horton's got his written report. Anything else you'd like to comment, Councillor Horton, as you go around?
I've attended some 18 meetings, and they're all listed in the business paper for all to see there, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In the interest of brevity, I've attended 10 meetings, and they're listed here. That I'll provide that to the minute clerk.
Thank you. Councillor Rolls.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've attended a number of the same meetings as everybody else. I'd just like to say that I was very happy to host on behalf of Hilltops, Selena Winpee, the other week. She was here a while ago at the March Against Domestic Violence, and she was in the area again and wished to come out to visit another farm. So we were more than delighted for her to come out to Clearview, especially to meet some younger farmers and to also talk about different aspects of I suppose, business life within the agricultural section. So I was very happy to do that on behalf of Hilltops. Thank you.
Councillor Stadmiller.
Meetings is minuted. I'd just like to make note that I was made aware that a number of the microphones weren't working or weren't being picked up by the recording in that last meeting. It must have been young. I don't know if there's a way that we can ensure that the microphones are tested so that when we speak, the video and the audio is picked up. And I've just got a couple of things, which is more of a comment that I'll mention in regard to the drought funding when that item comes up.
Thank you, Councillor Stadmiller. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The planning workshop, asset management working group and this meeting, I had a question for staff without notice in relation to the customer service policy. We're now 3.5 years into this council and we still don't have a serviceable policy. There are a number of drafts delivered several years ago which were totally inadequate. This council spent tens of thousands of dollars of ratepayers' money getting a consultant to work on this document and it still hasn't come back to council. So I'm wondering what's happening in relation to this, and I have a personal example this week where I spoke to someone in customer service first thing Monday morning who about a patently incorrect rate notice. And she was very helpful and told me who to email, and 3 working days later I've heard nothing, don't know whether my email's been received. Did a little bit of research. Other councils have a 24-hour turnaround at acknowledging receipt of correspondence. We don't have a policy. We're obviously not following any procedures or plans. When are we going to start?
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Councillor, I will leave that there for the time being. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've attended a variety of meetings which I've emailed to Leanne. The one I found the most interesting was the Valuer General workshop, which opened my eyes to how these valuations are done, and I urge anyone who hasn't had a look at their value on their land to have a look, because I'm sure some people will leave it to when they get their rate notice, and it's worth looking at. Thank you.
Good point. Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Walker.
Meetings as minuted, and I must admit I've had a few phone calls relating to what Councillor O'Connor just brought up, and I don't know whether some sort of information bulletin should be sent out to the general public on that matter.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. 10th of February, the EGM. 11th of February, the LEP committee. LEP committee again on the 25th of February, and the meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So there's those reports, councillors. Could I have someone move and second they be accepted? Move, Councillor Flannery. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Armstrong. All those in favour? Aye. Again, so be it. Thank you, councillors. Takes me over to item 11, Community Recognition Scheme. Did anyone have anything they wanted to do on that department today?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd like Hilltops Council to recognise the incredibly valiant and efforts of the Rural Fire Service over recent months. It has been absolutely outstanding, despite some of the worst conditions imaginable. Along with some rain, the RFS have protected assets, private and public. They've saved lives, and they've delivered a service that is unparalleled anywhere in the world to the community.
Thank you for that, Councillor. I did sign off some letters for some people after the last council meeting in regard to that, but we'll just make sure that the right people receive them. And on that note, I probably should have mentioned that memorial that I attended in Sydney, put on by the Premier. It was a very moving, as I said, an uplifting morning to see all the organisations and all the people there together, and the victims, and all the drought affected councillors, and the way it was conducted was a credit to the people who put it on. Okay.
Can I just comment on that?
Walker.
That was actually moved last meeting as well.
Yeah, that's what I said to Councillor Armstrong. There was a letter wrote.
And I'd like to do it the same as I did last meeting. Is also the other emergency services who worked equally as hard as the Rural Fire Service, including fire and rescue.
I believe I signed 5 letters earlier in the week to that very effect. So. from last month's meeting.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I just want to praise the gardeners in the Hilltops. The gardens in Harden have never been as, I've lived there for 10 years and they've never been as good as they are at the moment, and this is the worst year in the last 10 years. The English box are all manicured, the seaside daisies are all, everything's brilliant, terrific. Same in BOOROWA and the same in Young. So congratulations to all those concerned regarding the gardens.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. I'm sure the outdoor staff appreciate being noticed. So it takes me to...
I have
sorry?
one, if I may.
Yep.
And that is to all the village community groups. I had the privilege of going out and having a look at the progress on Monteagle Hall, and it's absolutely astounding where a couple of years ago they had no hope, or they were very disillusioned, I guess, on the lack of funding being granted to them on a hall, and now they've got a program of a brand new hall being hopefully finished by the end of the year, and it's absolutely a credit to the committee out there at Monteagle, but I'm well aware that many other village committees throughout the Hilltops area are working equally as hard.
Thank you for that, Councillor Walker, and yes, they all do a great job, the communities, especially the smaller communities. Councillors, the Acting General Manager's report, item 12.1 2024 is deferred to later in the meeting to closed. So that takes me to item 2025, which I think it was moved initially in the papers, just done that way. Item 2025, cash and investment report. It's there in front of you, councillors, and a recommendation. Moved Councillor Wallace, thank you. Seconded Councillor Rolls. No questions in regard to that. I'll put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Again. So be it. Thank you, councillors. 2026 outstanding rates and charges collection report. There's a report there and there's a recommendation there.
I move it with a question.
Moved Councillor Horton, seconded Councillor O'Connor. Question, Councillor Horton.
Just direct it to Director John Hughes. He inherited this problem, and he's, I believe, doing a pretty good job to try and rectify it. I noticed that at the end of 2018-29 year, 2.7 million was owing, and at the end of January, it came down to January this year to 1.9 million. That's good. However, the third instalment for the rates go out and are due this month, February. I noticed mine in Harden are due on the 28th. So that's going to boost that up again, and depending on how much we don't collect as to how much it goes up. I just asked the Director what action has been taken to reverse this trend, please.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Horton. The collections team, the rates and revenue team are putting a specification together at the moment for improvements to the revenue system to rectify some of the implementation problems that have caused some of the errors that Councillor Wallace was referring to in his question earlier, and some of the collection issues that have obviously been reflected in this report over many, many months. You'll notice over the last few months, 5% every month is a consistent sort of trend over recent months in improvements in those arrears balances. So the team, and if I may introduce at the back of the chamber, Courtney Taylor, who's our new revenue accountant, her team is doing a cracking good job in collecting some of these arrears balances, both on rates and on miscellaneous debtors in council. And they're taking it very seriously and doing some good work in trying to put together those specifications to correct some of the errors in the Technology One system and have those work through the system so that we can produce better billing and better collections, better information for customers and for our staff, so that we can better manage the debtors, because that's the easiest way to get on top of it. But also to work through better processes for council, because what we started with was 3 systems for 3 old councils and didn't really join the dots together very well from what I can see. And so that process is now being undertaken to join those dots together so that we can manage this problem better. From next month, and why I've invited Courtney into the chamber tonight is from next month we'll be presenting hopefully better information to council, so that you'll see better information about staff's effort at collecting those debtors as well, so that we'll be keeping a much closer eye on it, because cash flow is, and we'll be talking about this in the budget review paper coming up, cash flow is a vitally important component for council delivering its services to the community. So this is an area that Courtney and her team are taking very seriously in making sure that council has the necessary cash flow to deliver its services.
Thank you, Mr. Director.
Thank you. That question, Councillor Armstrong.
Also to Director of Strategy and Organisational Performance, question in regards to the water. Have the water billing periods now been harmonised across the three schemes? And if not, when will they be harmonised? Is there, if they are harmonised, is there any rhyme or reason as to why the collections at Boorowa and Harden are so disproportionate to those at Young?
The billing periods are now harmonised. The rhyme or reason to why the collections are so disproportionate, I can't give an explanation for, except to say that the team that's working on those collections, we've only begun in my brief tenure over the last 3 months to address this, and been making those system revisions which are now starting to bite, so that the alignment of the billing and collections effort is only a recent thing. And so all I can say is we should expect improved performance over the months to come. I can't account for the periods prior to that, but I would expect an improved performance now that we're managing up a single system and we're ironing some of the problems out of that. I would anticipate a uniformly improved collections effort across the ledger, and I would expect to see a smoother trend across all 3 elements of the ledger. There shouldn't be a particular reason why one element of the ledger should perform at odds with the other 2.
Agree with that? Any other questions in regard to that? I'm not too sure what sort of ledger system the bill goes out on. If it's not getting paid, it doesn't really matter, I don't think. But anyway, I had a mover and a seconder. All those in favour?
Aye.
Again. Thank you, councillors. Item 2027 is the quarterly budget review, which has just been handed out to council or received. The recommendation is actually in the quarterly budget review paperwork. To start with, have I got a mover and a seconder for the recommendation?
I'll move it.
Moved to Councillor Hortoner. Do I have a second to Councillor Rolls? O'Connor, Rolls, both. I have a mover and a seconder for that recommendation. Any questions or discussion in regard to this document?
A question.
Councillor Armstrong.
I've got multiple questions to a number of directors. Initially, the question relates to the funds for the Boorowa Waste Transfer Station. I'm just wondering how it is that a project that is not within this year's budget has incurred expenditure to that level without authority by council, in terms of it being a budget item in the current budget. If I can just have some information about that in the first instance, it'd be great.
And to the directors.
Councillor, it's there's the only answer is a disappointing one, and that is that the financial systems have been set up in a manner in council which has permitted a project without a budget within the financial system to have expenditure of that magnitude recorded against it. And that's indeed an alarming fact. My research, initial research, and why I've recommended in the review that further work on this ceases until a full investigation takes place, because I haven't had time to conclude a full investigation. My initial research indicates that this project was approved to be funded with the grant funds that were known about, and then further funded out of revenue funds by council, by the former Boorowa Council at the time of its conception. However, at the time this budget was conceived, and there was I would suggest to councillors a turnover of staff at that time, those funds weren't carried forward into the budget or entered into council's financial system. Your question very reasonably suggests that our financial systems ought to have detected that discrepancy and prevented that expenditure from occurring. The fact is our financial systems have been set up, the Tech One system has been set up with that basic and essential internal control overridden to allow the system to be implemented in a very fast manner by those in control of its implementation at the time. This and a number of other serious flaws in the system still need to be remedied for it to be operating effectively.
So in essence there were no controls in place at the time, is that what you're telling me?
There were a number of control deficiencies in place in the implementation of the Technology One system that still remain to be remedied.
They are not rectified?
They are not rectified as yet. The enormity of that task is not as simple as simply trying to correct one. They have a ripple-through effect that makes it a large project undertaking to correct one without simply causing a ripple effect that would cause us a number of problems. At the moment we can see that there are these projects in the council budget now that we know about and that are now legitimately represented in the budget, which gives us more confidence. I'm not at the position where I'm satisfied that we have a good internal control position.
I guess
that's not what I'm representing to you at all.
That begs the question, are there other projects in there of the same ilk? With the same projects that shouldn't be in there that are in there, or that those that have not been controlled in there? I guess all I'm looking for here, I'm not looking for a definitive answer, I'm looking for whether that possibility exists or not.
The answer is, are the budgetary controls in the Tech One financial system currently adequate? If that's your question, the answer is sadly no. Are there projects now being worked on that don't have a budget represented in the budget before council? The answer to that is also now. All of the projects that are being worked on or contemplated to be worked on are represented in this budget document. At least we've gotten to that point. So we're one step forward, but we're not at a satisfactory point yet.
You. Any other questions, Councillor?
It's the questions that relate to, I guess, my big concern with this is that there's a huge operating deficit. This council is not going to be sustainable if it continues on with operating deficits of this ilk, excluding capital. I mean, any normal business would be out, we'd all be out the door, and continuing to operate with such large deficits is not healthy for us. It's not healthy for the community, and it certainly is going to bring us under the eye of the minister. Make no mistake about that. I'm concerned that we have budgets that are capital driven, and those capital works we struggle to achieve those capital works. We have an overly aggressive capital works program when I think that we probably should have a fairly minimal capital works program and be in maintenance mode to reduce our operating costs. I'm looking here at the regional roads funding, and I can see that we're 6 months of the year gone, and only 2.9% of the budget is actually spent on that particular program. And we're not talking about tens of thousands, we're talking about over $1 million in there. So I guess, and there's plenty of other instances. I've got pen drawn all over the thing where we've got similar situations occurring. I just, for the life of me, I just can't see how we're going to be able to move forward with it. We're not achieving our capital works programs. Our operating expenses are growing to the point where clearly the LKS KRO report pre-amalgamation suggests there'd be savings of millions of dollars. In the first 2 years, we've spent more than the 4 years of LKS KRO savings. We can't go on this way, Mr Mayor, and councillors need to recognise that as we come up to budgets and estimates this year. There needs to be a fundamental change in the thinking of this council in the way that it manages its finances and undertakes its capital works programs, and needs to review its operational costs in the first instance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Very valid comments, and there's a saying about living within your means. I think that point has been driven home fairly solidly to the council in this report that's there in front of us now, and leading into the next 6 weeks and the budget workshops and meetings start to take place, I'm pretty sure that all councillors will be aware of that we need to be very, very conscious of the situation we're in, and setting out optimistic capital works and what we can achieve and what we can afford. And I'll probably leave my comments there till we get into those budget talks. But any other questions on this report that's in front of us now? Councillor Flannery. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, because I'll be very quick. It's not a very involved one, but I'd like to just give my compliments to the director, the incoming director who by this report has only been here since October 2019. Thank you, director, and at least bringing things to some sort of quality, improvement of quality, timeliness and accuracy. And it's something that we've been after, and it's only because of those facts that we've been able to get some sort of accurate assessment. So I'd like to thank the director very much for that.
Thank you for those words, Councillor Walker, and I concur, and I passed it on yesterday and the day before to the director. The disappointment is that we've had a $5 million tech scheme put in, and obviously for the last 3 years we've had not the resources in place from a council point of view to be able to take advantage of it, having that whiz-bang $5 million system there, and we're still trying to sort the problems out all this time later. So obviously the people that are working on it maybe needed upskilling or didn't have the skills. I'm not too sure where it went, but the sooner we get on top of it, the better. Councillor Flannery.
Mr Mayor, look, I'd just like to endorse Councillor Armstrong's comments. I think our position is a serious concern, and I just don't think we're addressing it adequately. We've set up the Asset Management Committee, which I don't know that we're making much headway there into reviewing where we're at. But but we have got to address some of these significant issues, and we've got to make sure that we understand fully the consequences of where we're heading. I think it's something that we haven't recognised adequately.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery.
Mr Mayor.
Councillor Rolls.
Look, I just have a question, Mr Mayor. I'm not sure, perhaps to Director Hughes. How much money or resources do you consider we really need to be put into getting that Tech 1 up to speed? If we're looking at the budget and that, how much do we really need to get it really working properly?
Councillor, I won't put a number on it in the public forum because that's a matter that needs to be considered in the budget workshop with councillors, and it's something that needs to be balanced off against the other needs of council. I do have an estimate of those costs, but I think it needs to be balanced with the other factors, and I don't think it's in the public interest to put that out as one factor against all of the other competing needs without councillors balancing those priorities in a workshop. And that's the recommendation of this paper, that those competing needs of councillors be taken to a workshop to be balanced out. So I think to pick them off one by one is not in the public interest, and that's why, as an officer, I was against trying to put together my own view of the budget world. So if you'll forgive me, I'll keep my powder dry on that one until we've concluded the budget workshop, but I will come to those budget workshops with those estimates at the ready.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you. A few items. I also wish to echo the comments of Councillor Armstrong, and I think the prime example of this is the Young Aquatic Centre, which I suppose my question in relation to this is probably not to the Director with the long name, but to Director of Operations. Is the total funding amount budgeted there, is that correct as the current budget stands, 4.44 million?
Councillor, I have had a similar length of time to review this as you have. I think that we need to review that number, and I'm putting together at the moment as to what has been paid, where the estimates are, and I need to double check that number.
Thank you, Director. My comment in relation to this is we have a new building which, when I drove past it the other day, I thought probably preferred the old one. We've wrecked a perfectly serviceable pool for the prospect of having an alternative one, and it's cost us $4.5 million and a lot of angst. But anyway, I do have some economic questions as well, and these also echo the comments of Councillor Armstrong. In relation to the revenue items, we've collected in user charges and fees 2.3 million of a budget of 12.6, and I notice a proposed adjustment in relation to not doing private weeds works. Are we likely to collect the balance of those user charges and fees in the coming 6 months? And I suppose I have the same question in relation to interest and investment revenue and other income.
At this point in time, the collections figures in the budget are feasible and realistic in our view. But that doesn't preclude the possibility of some adjustment during the workshop process, but it's as good as I can reckon, and we can reckon at this point in time. So the answer to that is a yes, to the extent that I'm able in the time that I've had.
Just to follow up, how can you do we backload all our user charges and fees to the second 6 months, and interest works the same way, does it? Or?
I'm not quite sure.
Well, we've only collected, in the first 6 months of the year, we've collected 2 million of projected 12 million in user fees. Do we anticipate getting the balance in the second 6 months. And the same goes for interest revenue. We've collected 147 of projected 855,000. Do we get paid interest all in the second half of the year as well?
Well, there are some time value of money considerations in there. I'll have to take your question on notice on the interest question and address it in the workshop. I haven't picked that point up, but there are some timing considerations in the budget where it's not a neat, even stream of timing of the revenue, but I think for the purposes of the presentation of the paper tonight, the best answer that I can give is that we stand on those numbers at this point in time. That's the best estimate that I have on the budget.
I'd be very surprised if they're true, but anyway.
Well, sorry through you, Mr Mayor, it's a budget estimate, and Councillor Wallace, we're in the position of presenting a budget which I think I'll make no bones about that I'm not betting the life of my children on. I'm saying that I'm somewhat dissatisfied with the process and the integrity of all of the figures, that we've done the best that we can do to improve the integrity of the figures in it, and that more remains to be done. The point is that we're working through that process, and we were up against a statutory deadline for bringing this report to Council. As the responsible accounting officer, I have up our sleeve, we have an extra $6 million of unreported cash that I've disclosed in the report that gives me some degree of comfort against the revenue concerns that you have. So I guess I've got a little bit of insurance in the back pocket, as it were, but had I not that, my answer might be somewhat different.
Thank you for that. Councillor Stadmiller.
Just a question regarding Technology One. I haven't seen the contract, but what responsibility did they have with Council to deliver a product that was workable for Council, and what are the ramifications of that if they don't?
Councillor Stadmiller, the contractual position between Council and Technology One is a very complex one, and I would refer all councillors to recent, or not that recent, but a few years ago, battles between Technology One and Brisbane City Council, for instance, where an organisation with much deeper pockets than ours didn't come out too well. Such technology contracts are very hard to prosecute when senior officers of Council have signed off acceptance certificates for work that's been done. And I note that, there have been various observations about people not being particularly skilled in the operation of the system, and I would take this opportunity to point out that many of those people haven't had much say or choice in how the system that they're working with has been implemented or configured. So I don't think it's, again, in the public interest or Council's interest to canvass any contractual matters between Council and Technology One in the Council chamber. I think there are definitely flaws on Council's side and on Technology One's side. I've had some very robust discussions with Technology One, and in a report that I'll bring to Council workshop we can canvass those issues further. But I wouldn't hold out hopes for the resolution of all of our problems being in a contractual dispute with any vendor of hardware or software. I've never seen a council be successful with doing that. Just as a matter of legal pragmatism, I think it's sound advice to give council that that's not a source of great hope.
Thank you. Councillor Stadmiller.
A statement and a question. Hilltops Council took on Technology One, of which very few, if any, of our staff were familiar with, and they walked away from a product that was being used at Harden that wasn't an end-of-life product. You may wish to keep your powder dry on this one as well, but can we have some information as to at what stage Council may decide to walk away from Tech One and engage with another contractor? I'll leave it there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologise for the length of my answers, but it's my habit to talk too much. The issue is with this that we have a system that I've said previously I've seen work very well in other councils and work poorly. It's a matter of the right business processes and the right configurations, our cost estimates that I'll bring to our budget workshops. In my view, put the cost of replacing the system at above the cost of fixing it.
Thank you for that. Any other further questions on the report? Councillor Flannery.
When the Technology One contract, my understanding, some time later this year, we have to decide whether to renew the licence, and that will be a further $1 million expenditure. Is that correct?
The figures involved in the ongoing maintenance of the licence and the remediation of the current position are all factored into the case for remediation of the system, so that's something I'll be bringing to the budget workshop.
Thank you for that. Stay tuned. Councillor Armstrong.
Yes, Mr Mayor. My question is also to... I'm quite certain that the Director would wish me to somewhere else, but it's not my intention that the messenger be shot either. I want to make that very clear, and I do share Councillor Walker's sentiments in regards to the transparency with which we provided. I note some good news. I believe that there might be a $400,000 saving potentially, in that we've recognised 100% of our borrowing costs in the water and sewer funds, and we're 6 months through the year, and I don't believe that we've incurred any cost to date. So that's potentially an improvement in the performance of the water and sewer fund. I wish I could say the same for general fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Sorry, just one
Councillor
further,
Wallace.
Mr Mayor, if I could. I noticed with interest the proposed adjustment for the consultants' fees. We've budgeted on about $1 million, and the spend for the first 6 months of the year is already more than that. And the proposed budget is closer to $2 million, so a 100% increase. Can someone speak to why the increased cost and the nature of those consultancies?
Who'd like to try and handle that one?
Is this a transfer from capital you're talking about? That's an amount that was incorrectly classified as a capital item that's transferred from capital to operational expenditure. So it's a reclassification rather than an additional amount.
Thank you.
It'd be nice to describe it as an accounting trick, but it's not. It's just for reclassification.
Thank you for that. Okay, councillors, is there any other questions in regard to that report? If not, I've got a mover in a second, or I'll put that. All those in favour? Again, it's unanimous. So be it. Thank you, councillors. My glasses back on. And again, we say thank you to the Director for dealing in what is a complex and in-depth part of our organisation. Item 2028, development application stats for January. And the report there, councillors, and the recommendation. Do I have a mover for the recommendation? Moved Councillor Horton. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Rolls. No questions to that report? Councillor Stadmiller.
Yeah.
Sorry, you go, Ken.
Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I have a comment in that there's a, we might be all aware that there's been the development going on we just talk about where funding's going and probably money being spent that's we haven't been seen where it's been spent, and there's been a development out of Bendick Morrell been going on since 2013, and there's still disputes out there over what is to me seemingly fairly small issues that could be resolved around the table in a matter of 5 minutes. I'll just offer that comment because I don't see it listed on this this program at all, and yes, it's costing this council a lot of money.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stadmiller, do you have a question?
Councillor Walker just reminded me of something that I was worried about. I would like to know the full cost to council for the Bendick Morrell issues out there and the reasons as to why they haven't been solved after 3 years. My question is just on the piggery which has been proposed. It was lodged on the 17th of January 2020. How long will that stay with the external referrals approximately before it will come back to council?
Acting General Manager, would you like to take that one?
Yes, so as you said, it was received on the 17th of January. We're currently getting some more information from the applicant before we go to consultation. So consultation, from memory, minimum 28 days, I think it is. And then after that, there'll be the referrals from the agencies coming in over a similar period, the following 28 or so days. So the actual dates of those, until we start our consultation, we can't tell you as yet. But as that becomes available, we'll be telling the public and yourselves as well.
Thank you for that. Any other quick, Councillor Armstrong?
Just one question in regards to DA 20190063. The land that's proposed development, is that council? Sorry, is that Crown land or privately held land?
So this is the one at Harden?
Correct.
Okay. That's the tennis courts that are currently at the facility already, at the golf course there. The ones in the corner of the lot fronting onto the street.
So is that private land or Crown
I'll
land?
have to take that on notice. From memory, it actually is private land, but I'll double check.
I may be able to answer that to a degree. I believe it's private recreation land, and there is a little bit of conjecture around the forecourts going to the country club. It will leave the town potentially in the future with no courts that are zoned public recreation if that land use is changed on Albury Street.
Thank you. Any other questions in regard to that report? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Again, councillors, 2029 is a DA on a dwelling house. It's moved by Councillor Walker, seconded by Councillor Stadmiller. No questions or queries in regard to that report? I'll put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Again, that's unanimous, I believe. Thank you, councillors. Sorry, we'll come back a step. Sorry. Those against? Councillor Armstrong.
Sorry, I thought that's the call, not a call.
Hang on, we'll start again. We'll start right again. We'll go right back. On that note, I'll remind councillors that we all need to have a show of hands then when we vote on these matters. I've had a mover and a seconder for item 29, lot 37 on DP 753624, Gloaming Road, Harden. A mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Recorded. All. Yep, thank you. Those against? That is carried. Councillor Armstrong is against. All voting and all matters needs to be recorded. Thank you. Let me know, Leanne, when you're all right. Yes. You all right? Yes. Okay, thank you. Item 2030, Urban Tree Management Policy with Council-owned and managed lands. There's a report there, Councillor, a policy and a recommendation. Move, Councillor Stadmiller.
Seconded with a question, Mr.
Seconded,
Mayor.
Councillor Wallace with a question.
It's not specifically in relation to this policy, but it's in relation to this policy and following ones that are in the agenda. Previously we had a policy review committee and that seemed to be disbanded because all councillors wish to see the policies prior to them coming to the council meeting. Could these policies please be provided to us prior to meeting? Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Councillor. That's And yeah, they're a valid point again. So on that note, Question, Councillor Armstrong.
This relates to the policy itself. I note that in the definitions section, there's a definition of urban, and it relates to trees growing and owned managed land, council-owned and managed land. Sorry, I've got a mark in front of it. Within the town limits or the 60 km/h signs. There are a number of urban areas that don't have 60 km/h signs. A lot of the villages. BOOROWA, in actual fact, doesn't have a 60 km/h sign. It has a 50 km/h sign and a 40 km/h sign. So I'm just wondering whether this policy would be applicable at BOOROWA, or whether the use of the term urban would be applicable there. Secondly, there is no definition of what a significant hazard is when it comes to clause 6.5, refusal. It cites a significant hazard if no significant hazard or other considerations apply. We better define what a significant hazard is, otherwise it's rather arbitrary. In regards to public consultation, 6.6.1 street tree plan doesn't define what sort of public consultation will be used. And I just have some concerns in regards to a decision made by the Court of Appeal in regards to Hughes v Hunters Hill and the classification of trees as artificial structures. Just wondering whether there is any implications as a result of that decision in regards to this policy.
Who'd like to take on?
Can I just ask the councillor to elaborate on that decision, what the effective it was?
Hughes first.
Certainly. In that particular instance, initially the plaintiff was lost the case, and there was a significant reliance on the part of the insurance company of a non-feasance. On appeal, it was unanimous in favour of the litigant. In that the tree itself, because it was planted by council, it constituted an artificial structure. When council places artificial structures, it has an absolute responsibility for that artificial structure. Ergo, plaintiff won, council nil.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Armstrong, we're asking for those matters to be addressed now.
Well, I guess I'd actually, before I vote on this, I'd like some consideration of those issues. I'd actually probably prefer this to be considered in light of those matters, and then come back to us at a later date. But that's up to council to decide rather than me.
I'll move that way, Councillor Armstrong. I'll second it.
To be deferred to Councillor Armstrong, is that?
I'm happy to move that way.
Councillor Armstrong's moving this matter be deferred to those and probably other matters to be addressed. Councillor Wallace has seconded that. In that regard, if that's the case, I'm going to move in a second for a deferral. I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Against? That's unanimous, councillors. That matter will be deferred and brought back to council. With those matters being addressed and consulted about with councillors before it comes back.
Can I had some other issues to bring up, which may be part of that report, and is that some sort of guideline of what tree sizes are recommended in streets planting now, or urban planting, I should say, that wouldn't create a risk and achieve the objective of what they're there for. Yeah. And along with that, there's always been a debate of exotic against native species as well.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. I presume staff have taken those notes in regard to that policy, and we'll address those when it comes back to council. So we move on to item 2031. Again, it's rural roadside vegetation management within council-owned and managed roads policy. There's a report there, a policy there, council, and a recommendation.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that we defer this, but with some comment, please.
I've got a mover to have this one deferred on the grounds of more information, or what?
I don't believe that the policy is clear. In the statement of the Rural Roadside Vegetation Management Policy, so it's roadside vegetation management. Then when you read the policy, it's just not consistent. I think these both need to come back to a workshop, but when you read through the policy that is then detailed, it would seem that maintenance work and council work are two of the key concerns when looking at the vegetation along roadsides, and I don't think it's just not clearly delineated what we're trying to achieve.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a second for that deferral?
I certainly
Councillor Walker is a seconder there.
With a comment, if I may.
Yes, Councillor.
It is a landowner's responsibility to maintain the boundary fences, fair enough, and yet any trees grown within, it says somewhere in the report, on the roadside is also the responsibility of the landowner. I've got real concerns with this, especially given the recent bushfires where we're looking at distance from the edge of the road to boundaries and what's cleared and when it comes to fire escapes.
Thank you, Councillor Walker, for those comments. So I've had a mover and a second to have this matter deferred. I'll put that. Sorry?
Mr Mayor, just another comment. If we're going to defer these, we really need to bring them back to a workshop or a committee to go through them. I mean, there's a number of typos I picked up through this, and we just can't put them out on public display if there's typos. I also think, given we have a Gaylong Road DA in front or proposed works in front of us, I think this is inconsistent with work on the Gaylong Road. I think we've got to look at what we've got in front of us and how these sit with them.
Thank you, Councillor. So the idea is having these matters deferred is not to put them in the bottom drawer. It's to come to a workshop and to be worked on with councillors and get something that's appropriate and fits that we actually use. So, any other further, Councillor Stadmiller?
Just very briefly, Mr Mayor, 6.12, collection of firewood. We're going into winter where there'll be a number of families looking for firewood. It's becoming more scarce. We've simply got firewood collection is expressly prohibited on all roads. Are we going to do some media around that to educate the ratepayers and residents? And can I get an answer into what sort of outcome there is if someone is caught and what level of prohibition there is?
That's another relevant point. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, so we've had a mover and a second to have it deferred. All those in favour? Again, it's unanimous. It's deferred to the workshop to come back to council. Item 2032, unsealed and sealed roads program progress report. Councillors, there's a report there and a recommendation there.
Move the recommendation.
Moved, Councillor Walker. Seconded. Seconded. Councillor Plenary, thank you. Any question, Councillor Stadmiller?
Look, I don't know a lot about roads other than, yeah, they do fall apart quite regularly within the Shire and there's a number of complaints. Are we trialling or testing the way we're putting our surfaces together and seeing whether they will last longer, or are we just scraping by with our budget to sort of cover the bare minimum? What measures have we got in place to see whether putting more base or more sub-base or subgrade into a road would affect its longevity, I suppose I'm asking?
Hand that to the relevant director.
Through you, Mr Mayor. We're always looking at other options there. Sometimes we stabilise subgrades, depending on the amount of traffic. Sometimes we just put more sub-base in. When I say stabilise, we put other material in there to cementitious material to bind it all together.
Can you just explain cementitious, probably?
Lime. It binds it. And we look at a lot of things. But right now, the absolute subgrade, which is where we build the road from, is just dry. There is just nothing in there. If I water it, the water from the base course just gets sucked into the subgrade. I cannot do anything with the stone that it is there. So that's why this report is here basically. Until I get some rain, there's pretty much no unsealed road maintenance I can do.
Mr Mayor?
Councillor Rolls.
Can I just make a comment? I acknowledge that we get a number of complaints about the road, but we also get quite a number of complimentary comments about our roads, and it was passed on to me the other day actually, that since amalgamation, the roads in Hilltops area, this truck driver felt we're improving all the time. So I think that's a positive compliment for all the gangs that work on the road, and from the bottom up and also from the top down. So if those comments can be passed on, I think it's important that we pass on those positive comments as well.
Thank you, Councillor Rolls. Councillor Armstrong.
Just a question in regard to the. I do note that the gravel resheeting program for the western area is 19.5% in round figures expended. But I'm just wondering what's happened with Pearls Lane, and we've only got 8,800 square metres, but we've done 12,500 square metres. Have we done some twice?
Councillor, that particular detail, I'll have to come back to you. I'll come back to councillors with a note on that. Yeah, I just do not know the answer.
Take one.
Mr Mayor,
Councillor Flannery, sorry.
thank the Director for his report, but I hope that our finances aren't so bad that we can only afford to grade roads every 5 years.
Pretty sure you'll get concurrence around the table. Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr Mayor, can I just flag I'd like to make a comment on the previous item once this is voted on, if I could be provided a little bit of leniency, very briefly.
Probably not, but I'll see how I go. Righto. We've got a mover and a seconder on this report that we're dealing with at the moment. I've had a few questions, comments. Everyone happy? I'll put that recommendation that's there. All those in favour? Aye. Again? That's unanimous. Councillor Stadmill, if you've got a comment to make in regard to the one that matter's been deferred that wants to be said now, we'll wait to the workshop. You tell me.
Yeah, very quickly, it could be a matter of urgency. There was a tree that fell over on the Burley Griffin Way just east of the race course. I believe Mark Crisp would be aware of the straight there before Cunningar, and there's a couple of other trees that are very suspect at the moment which council may need to inspect, I think, maybe in jeopardy of falling over.
I'm pretty sure they're everywhere, yep, and feel free to report them to council at any time. Any members of the public that are watching this broadcast, yeah, if you think there's a tree that's a danger, it needs to report it to council. The next item is 2033. KRUGER Health and Wellness Complex, Hydrotherapy Pool Major Capital Upgrades. Councillors, there's a pretty in-depth report there and stuff about that report. To start with, can I have a mover? Moved Councillor Horton, seconded Councillor O'Connor. Questions in regard to that report? Councillor Armstrong.
I note the description of the condition is fairly graphic. Just wondering, how long has it been rusty and how long has the liner been deficient?
Through you, Mr Mayor. A lot of it's surface rust, but it's starting to penetrate. It's starting to become a problem. The liner, over the last couple of years, we've certainly noticed that it's degrading, and it will, as we've said in the report, it will certainly need replacing in the near future.
Mr Mayor, I'm just surprised we have an annual maintenance budget for this building and we don't seem to be maintaining that asset. If it's surface rust, I would have thought surface rust would have been treated. Is there not some sort of maintenance schedule? I suppose it's a question I need to put back to the Director of Infrastructure. Is there some form of maintenance schedule for this particular structure, given its uniqueness?
There is some maintenance. in terms of this, but these are things that we have noted. The amount of rust there and corrosion is starting to increase, so that will become not just corrective in terms of surface rust, but it's more corrosion is starting to appear. And it's becoming deeper than just surface rust.
Would these not have been identified during those previous inspections? The asset inspections that would be...
That's why this report is here now, Councillor Armstrong.
I take that as a no that they haven't been identified then, is that correct?
Not previously, but since we've...
Have there been inspections in the past?
I can't answer that question, but this is inspection since I've been here, the yearly inspection, Councillor.
Mr Mayor, I think we really need to have a look at the inspections. I'm frightful that this is another example of assets that council has that are not maintained, that are not inspected, or certainly not adequately inspected, and their conditions are not brought to council's attention soon enough. I'm aware that this particular facility has had a bit of a checkered past. I think it was decommissioned for a period of time by the former Harden Shire Council due to maintenance issues, but it just concerns me that it's an excellent community facility that with a cost attached to it now that's totally unbudgeted and absolutely unforeseen because of a lack of maintenance inspections potentially.
Councillor Flannery, I think, comment, question?
Yes, Mr Mayor. It's a number of questions. In relation to the liner, it says it's a custom fit. Does that mean the liner is actually a custom fit itself and can only be purchased from the USA, or does it also include the actual fitting of the liner? Will we require technicians from the USA to fit that liner? That's question one. On page 104, just cathodic 103 it says cathodic protection not evident in frame. You go over page, it says once paired back system is recommended to be deployed. No cost determined. I just couldn't understand that paragraph. If the director could further explain that, could the explanation under bearings be more? Could we get a verbal explanation of the bearings issue? It's not clear to me what that means, please.
The custom fit liner, through you, Mr Mayor, the custom fit liner is basically, it's not a liner that I can buy off the shelf. We have to custom fit it for that pool. The suppliers of the pool claim that they have to do it and bring the technicians out, as they do with a number of things in there. We are currently looking at suppliers locally, and if there is a current local supplier that can do that work for us. In terms of the bearings, similar answer, that we are looking for local suppliers for that, rather than the American company that supplied this. Yes, they want to have that work and they want to do that work. We are trying to find local suppliers for that to keep those costs at a minimum.
As I think we were advised, the former Harden Council was advised that work had to be done previously by US technicians, and given it was out of warranty, I think we were able to determine that the work could be done by local technicians, and that proved to be the case. So if we could have that followed up thoroughly, please. I acknowledge that perhaps we have to buy the liner from America, but although there is a company in Sydney that does liners, tank liners these days, and perhaps they'd be worth pursuing. Just getting back to the paragraph over page, it says once paired back system is recommended to be deployed. I just don't understand what that paragraph means, please. And the paragraph, require action one above to enable access drives and seals. I just don't understand what that is saying.
Sorry, Councillor. Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we need to buy a new liner. I've asked my guys to have a look at whether we can get the liner in Australia or whether we have to buy it from America. At the moment, we have a quote from America for $79,000 plus extras. If we can reduce that, and if we can bring that in with the local suppliers, yes, we will. We put a provisional item in there. Similarly with the bearings.
Now, Mr. Mayor, or to the Director, the liners in the first paragraph, then we go into the steel frame, then we go into the cathodic protection, and then we go, it just says, once paired back, system is recommended to be deployed, no cost determined to date, but expected to be in the vicinity of 10,000. What is expected to be in the vicinity of 10,000? What does that relate to? Is it the liner? Is it the work itself? I assume it's saying once the liner is paired back, but it's just not clear to me what the $10,000 is talking about.
It is the fitting of the liner and minimal works there. I expect that to be around $10,000. And potentially I can get the cost of the liner itself. All this report is here is to bring Council's attention that a lot of work needs to be done. It's also bringing to Council's attention that we're still doing some work on getting further costs and paring this cost down and getting local suppliers so that we can do that. When I know what those local suppliers are, I have to make some allowance. I can't just say my guess is. I have to make some allowance there. When I can figure out what local suppliers I've got, I can come back and be more clear with Council. But it would be reticent of me when we're coming into this time not to draw Council's attention to the fact that there is some fairly major works that will need to be done on the hydro pool. And that's why I brought this here.
I'm struggling to understand the answer to the question Councillor Flannery's asked. So I thought earlier on was said that the liner, and they had to fly people over here to install it. Then I thought you just said then that 10,000 could possibly be doing with putting that liner in. So that can't be the case, is it? I'm not too sure about what that 10,000 for is there neither. It seems to conflict what you said earlier. I don't know.
Potentially, the cost of the liner and the installation may be 10,000. It may be more than that. I don't know the answer to that yet. But I have a quote from the American guys to say 79,000. But I'm trying to get reduced costs there.
In regard to the bearings, Councillor Flannery's question in regard to that, what that means?
I can get them locally, but I can't complete the bearing works until I've done the liners.
Thank you. I have a question in regard to the matter. I'm not too sure and up to speed with where we've got to with council property, and an officer was employed to go through with the leases and sort out just where council stood with those matters. I know that officer is no longer with council. I don't know if it's been replaced or not, but my understanding of this pool, there are operators who operate this facility, 2 or 3 of them that use the facility. And it'll be confidential, of course, but is there a lease in place where council is collecting enough money to cover maintenance funds? Is there a maintenance fund bucket there for this to be done that we're collecting off the operator? Or are we taking on all the costs and the operator taking all the skimmings off the top? I'm not too sure of that lease arrangement, or have it's been renewed. I'm not too sure how it operated in the early days. I understand it's a great piece of machinery and a great thing to have in our community, and people travel from a long way to use it. My question is, has council got a lease in place that covers these maintenance costs going into the future with the current operators?
Mr. Mayor, There is a licence in place not dissimilar to the arrangement for the health and wellness complex occupancy enjoyed by the medical practitioners. You're correct in observing that to comment further probably enters into commercial in confidence territory. I'll bring all the necessary information to the budget workshop.
Thank you.
Question, Mr Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Stadmiller.
Can I move an amendment with the permission of the mover and seconder? That amendment would be to have brought back to Council the costs to maintain the hydrotherapy pool for the former HARDEN Shire and the current Hilltop Shire. Cost to maintain. Yep. For the former HARDEN Shire and current Hilltops Council.
So you're asking for all the maintenance costs that's been spent on that facility from day dot. Is that what you're after?
Mr Mayor, just based on what you said, I'm asking for the costs since it came into the hands of HARDEN Shire Council and Hilltops Council. I think that way we can determine how we are faring in regards to operational costs of the pool versus rent or so forth.
So I just want to make clear that we're all clear what the amendment means. You're asking for any money that's been spent on maintenance from day dot to now.
Day dot when it became property of HARDEN Shire Council.
Big task probably, but anyway, we'll see how we go.
I think it's always been property of HARDEN Shire Council, and that would be enormous. I would have thought that would be enormous, trying to find all those costs.
That's why I just want to clarify what the council is looking for.
Well, it's very hard to operate a business if we don't know what it costs, so this is the only way to find out.
I understand the sentiment that we both made, yeah. I just don't know if council staff have got the ability to go right back to day dot and find out every penny that's been spent on the facility. They may have, and that's not up to me. But if that's the amendment you've moved, that's up to the mover and the seconder to accept that, which was Councillor Horton and Councillor O'Connor.
I accept that.
Accepts it?
I'd rather see if we can get the cost of maintenance, like a yearly cost of maintenance. I don't know that it would be any advantage to have the whole maintenance cost because, A, it's going to take a hell of a long time to go through records, and the costs will have increased over time simply because everything does. But I think, if we have a yearly maintenance cost, what has it cost in the last year or the last 2 years, so that we've got some idea whether or not we're covering it with the lease or whether we're putting in.
Can I respond to that? I agree with your sentiments, Councillor O'Connor. I just think by doing it the way I asked, there may be a number of items that are failing on a more rapid basis than others, and we may be able to buy them in bulk and be provided with a better understanding. That's all I'm after.
Okay, Councillor Stadmiller's asked for that amendment to be put in there. Councillor Horton's happy enough with it. Councillor O'Connor, you happy to let that go as it is for there?
I just see it's a hell of a lot of work for staff at the moment when we're trying to focus on budget.
So that's a no?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry that amendment would have to move as a foreshadowed.
Just a
question. Councillor Armstrong.
Question to the Director, and perhaps he may need to rely upon some of his staff that are present in the room. I would imagine that those costs, the costs that Councillor Stadmiller refers to for the former HARDEN Shire would be within the authority system. Is authority still available? And I guess were they separately accounted for, or are they bulked in with all the other maintenance costs?
Might just pass that to staff at the back. I see they're nodding in regard to that question, Councillor. Yep.
I understand where Councillor Stadmiller is coming from there. It's just that I'm thinking that perhaps there may not be the ability to extract that data.
I think, through you, Mr Mayor, if I may, we'll give certainly I can commit to give our best endeavours. I just know with these things what the financial system records, and then the ability to track back to documents can sometimes be a fraud exercise, and I guess why I'm concerned is that there is a lot of work on our plates at the moment, so we can certainly commit to our best endeavours, and accessing the transactions in the system is one thing, but finding the documents might be another.
Thank you for that.
Through the Mayor, if I could ask a question of the Director, John Hughes. The pool was built, I think it was 2008, so it's only 12 years back. Surely we'd have records of costs.
Through you, Mr Mayor, as I said, accessing the transactions in the system, which might say invoice for valve, then tracking that back to the document to find which particular valve on a very complex piece of plant might prove to be a more difficult undertaking. And that's why I'm concerned about tracking back a whole life of history of maintenance of a very complex piece of plant may be a very difficult undertaking to do in a timely manner for this particular asset, which is a hellishly complicated asset.
Councillor O'Connor would like to...
Sorry, just one more question, and it's probably of the former HARDEN staff, if you don't mind. Was the hydrotherapy pool maintenance included in the KRUGER centre, the medical centre maintenance, or were they always separate?
Past
Through you, Mr. Mayor. They were separate. We actually had separation of the information. I think it's back to about our current system, back 2012. We maintained a separate record, and there was also a contribution made outside of that. There was never any contribution made to actually cover depreciation on those assets. I think that's the question.
Sorry, can you just repeat that last bit? There was never any
Contribution made to the depreciation of the assets. And I think that's where you are at this particular point. That answers the question, Councillor.
I think it does. Thank you very much for that. Look, on that note, I'd ask Councillor O'Connor to reconsider allowing that amendment to go through. Thank you, Councillor. So with that amendment, the Council will do their best. Councillor Flannery?
A couple of more questions. What was the process that brought this this review to Council table? And also, do we know, is the liner leaking? And what was the warranty on the original liner, do we know?
The process, through you, Mr Mayor, the process was the annual inspection. It was identified that the liner is starting to get very hard in places, which indicates that it is likely to fail sooner rather than later. In terms of your final part of the question, what's the warranty? No, I do not know. But I suspect it's well out of warranty by now.
I can also assume the liner isn't leaking at this point.
Not at this point in time.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. So with that amendment that's been put there and accepted, I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Again, unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 2034, use of Roundup by council staff. There's a report there, councillors, and there's a recommendation there to receive and note the report.
I'll move it with a comment.
Moved, Councillor Walker. Seconded. Seconded, Councillor O'Connor. Question or comment, Councillor Walker?
To me, this is a very much nonsensical report. It tells us nothing. It gives no recommendation to receive and note. That's a nothing statement. But to me, my biggest concern is this paranoia against glyphosate at the moment. I don't see any report from SafeWork against, for example, the other chemical used in this report, that of Basta. Now, I don't know whether the health benefits or the health disadvantages, and it mentions carcinogenic and respiratory and all other problems with other chemicals for some reason we're just picking on glyphosate, and I don't see any cost efficiencies, any or use efficiencies in this report. For some reason, we've got some sort of set against glyphosate, where in fact these other chemicals will probably do just as much damage with half the efficiency of what glyphosate has. So to me, we've got a report that means is nonsensical.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Flannery.
Mr Mayor, look, I'd like to speak against it, so I don't know whether you need someone to speak in favour of it.
Well, before we start, we've got a mover and a seconder, yep. So if we're going to do process, and we'll
Happy to speak in favour of it.
Councillor Armstrong would like to speak in favour of it, okay? That's all it says, receive and note, that's all we're talking about, so yep, okay.
Mr Mayor, with the greatest respect to councillors, I believe that this is an operation issue. It goes directly to work health and safety, and the appropriate recommendation is to receive and note. Otherwise, council may be involving itself in operational issues.
Yeah, Mr Mayor.
Just 1 second there, please, Councillor Horton, to give me time to... There was a speaker who spoke against accepting the report. So have we got a speaker to support accepting or noting the report?
That was Councillor
I want to speak in favour of the report.
I'd like to speak against it.
That's where I'm getting to. Councillor Armstrong spoke to receive and note the report on those grounds. Councillor Flannery or Councillor Horton wish to speak against it?
Yeah, Mr Mayor. Back in 2015, the World Health Organisation proved that this glyphosate, or Roundup, I believe is the brand name, and it causes cancer and it kills people. The United States have banned the use of it, and it's all right for us to say receive and note. I don't concur with that. I believe I'd like to put an amended motion that we ban the use of it in the complete Hilltops. Since I've lived in Harden, I've never seen so many people dying of cancer. From where I came from, you hardly ever heard about it. And you see planes flying over, spraying bloody weed killer to kill things in the crops. It drifts along in the air, gets on your washing. It's a great, I've used it, it's a great weed killer, but it kills people. And I believe we should ban the use of it, not just temporarily to see what happens. What's going to happen, we'll see more people killed and died from it. Let's get rid of it.
Councillor, did I just hear you say you want to foreshadow a motion? Or not?
I would. I'd like...
Could you word that foreshadowed motion, please, for the title?
Yes,
just so Leanne can get that down, just in case we need.
I'd like to move that we ban completely the use of glyphosate, GLYPHOSATE, brand name Roundup, from use within the Hilltops region. I know it's a great killer, weed killer, but it should be banned. It's good enough to ban it temporarily, and Americans ban it.
Just hang on.
That we ban completely the use of glyphosate, brand name Roundup, from use within Hilltops Council. Thank you, Leanne, that's good.
Okay, so there's a foreshadowed motion there. So we'll deal with the motion we've got at the start. Councillor Armstrong spoke for the recommendation of receiving and noting the report. Councillor Flannery, Councillor Horton spoke against it. Anyone else like to speak for receiving and noting the report?
Question, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Stadmiller.
The foreshadowed motion has that we ban completely the use of glyphosate brand name Roundup from use within Hilltops Council. Should that be from use by Hilltops Council, or are we also banning residents from using it in their own backyards? I'm unclear on that.
I'll ask the mover of the foreshadowed motion if that's his terminology or what he would like to see done. I don't believe we have the power to do the opposite. Yeah. So would we like to have that corrected by the use of Hilltops Council?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I agree with what you're saying. I don't think we can make that compulsory for residents, but we can from the council. My amended motion is with respect to Hilltops Council.
Thank you. So,
Mr Mayor, I'd like to speak against the recommendation to receive and note the report. Whilst there has been court cases in America regarding glyphosate, It is not banned in the US to the best of my knowledge. It might be banned in parts of Europe. Diesel is a known carcinogen. There are a number of known carcinogens. Smoking's a known carcinogen. And I don't believe we ban any of those. Roundup is the only effective complete weed killer in a council that we are dependent on agriculture for. I think this is getting extreme, and all of the components of Roundup are naturally occurring chemicals in the environment. So I think it started with that we banned the use by council employees. We're now receiving and noting a report that says we continue that ban. I don't believe. I think there are adequate protection measures we can put in place to enable roadside spraying with Roundup and the use of Roundup in the agricultural environment along roads to control noxious weeds.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Just to get some things clear for myself for a start, speaking for Councillor Armstrong to receive and note the report which says we have a temporary suspension. So I agree very much with Councillor Walker's comments earlier. This report tells me absolutely nothing and makes no decisions and doesn't give councillors any guidance as to where we should or shouldn't go with it, from my reading of it. And Councillor Armstrong pointed out his reasons for why he spoke for receiving this report in regard to WH&S. Councillor Horton foreshadowed a extreme motion, but it's there, it's foreshadowed. Councillor Flannery spoke against receiving and noting this recommendation, but I don't know what we're aiming to achieve if we don't receive and note this report. I don't believe
that a report come back to council as to why we have banned the use of Roundup, not to receive and note it, and what adequate control measures can be used by staff, i.e. protective equipment, so they can use it in certain circumstances.
So the idea is to not accept, receive and note this report, but have a more detailed one come back to council. That's what you're after. Yep, thank you. I just wanted to make that clear so I'm clear on it, and all the other councils are clear on why we're speaking for and against this report. So I've had 1 for, a couple against receiving it and noting it.
Is that foreshadowed?
No, it's not at the moment. That's what I'm trying to... Because if we vote on this and we accept it, that's the end of the matter. If we don't, there's a foreshadowed motion on the board that I'll have to put. I don't know whether that'll go. That leaves us in limbo if we have... Thank you. Foreshadowed motion coming from Councillor Flannery, please, Leanne.
Can we foreshadow a separate motion, or do we have
to foreshadow. No, you can foreshadow.
Okay. That a separate report come back to council detailing what, if any, adequate WHS safety measures can be put in place to enable the continued use of Roundup or glyphosate.
Sorry,
to enable the continued use of glyphosate to control noxious weeds on roadsides.
Weed control. Control, I mean.
To protect the agricultural industry.
Don't worry about the people.
Councillors?
Can I ask a question, please, Mr Mayor?
Question, Councillor O'Connor.
This is of the Director. Now, your staff would also already be using what WHS measures they could be using, wouldn't they?
Yes, they are, Councillor. They're currently using the rubber gloves as per requirements and breathing apparatus. There may be some other things to do. Following that, I'll check what else we can do and can't do. I'm happy with that to come back with another report. It will refer to state cover, our insurers, and also recommend that we find some other chemicals to use rather than Roundup.
Thank you.
Just, Mr Mayor, if I can, I believe that Roundup is a proprietary name and we're referring to a particular manufacturer's proprietary product. If we are talking about the use of glyphosate, then when there are any number of manufacturers that manufacture glyphosate, I would suggest that we refrain from particularly referring to Roundup, and that's exactly right. But I think there's significant discussion as well, and a foreshadowed amendment there that relates specifically to Roundup.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong, for that
Through you,
point.
Mr Mayor, I've made some observations in this report concerning the risk management capacity of council and work health and safety, and those go to in particular the issues of Councillor Flannery's question, and I'm not certain that they're matters that can actually be referred back to Council with greatest respect. The management of work health and safety are not answers rightly referred back to Council for decisions. I have great concerns about how we might craft a report to refer back to Council. Some of those questions might be referred to a Work Health and Safety Risk Management Committee or the Work Health and Safety Committee per se, or it's a very complex question to put into an officer report to Council. I'm stumped as to how we might address that report, particularly since in a recent consultative committee meeting I noted that Council at this point in time doesn't have a WHS risk committee and needs to convene one. How we might in a timely manner address what WHS measures we have in a report in a timely manner back to Council may be a difficult issue.
Maybe preempting stuff there in that regard. But anyway, we'll see where we go with this. Councillor Walker?
Yeah, I have a real issue with this, and to me, we're missing the whole point. I don't think there would be a chemical in this field that wouldn't be carcinogenic. For some reason, we're picking on glyphosate because it's had some negative media. My point is, if we're going to be serious about banning a certain chemical, we need to look at all of them. I know, for example, that my family, some of my family members have side effects from other herbicides, and we don't use them at all, and yet Council will go ahead and use them. This is utterly ridiculous in my mind, just picking on one chemical, one herbicide, and saying that that's what causes the cancer in this area.
Thank you, Councillor Councillor Walker. Look, we've had a fair discussion about this, and I went for and against, and we've got a couple of foreshadows there. So what I'm going to do is, I had a move and a seconder to receive and note the report, and there's a couple of foreshadowed motions there. So I'm going to put the first recommendation that had a move and a second, and that was receive and note the report. So all councillors in favour of the recommendation of receive and note the report, please raise your hand. Record those. 1, 2, 3. Yep, thank you. Those against? So that recommendation is lost. Comes into play now the first foreshadowed motion by Councillor Horton. Do we have a seconder for that? Sorry? No, I know I haven't got one, so I'm asking. I'm asking, Is there a seconder for Councillor Horton's foreshadowed motion?
Where's Councillor Horton's?
It's gone off my screen, sorry.
It's ban the use of glyphosate.
To ban the use of glyphosate in the Hilltops.
By the Hilltops Council.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Because it has been banned in the United States. Some years ago.
I'll second that motion, Mr Mayor.
So I've got a seconder now. It's Councillor Rolls has seconded. Okay, Councillor Horton, you want to speak for it, or you spoke for it? Do you want to speak for it again? No, thank you. Anyone like to speak against?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Armstrong.
I'm just really concerned that this is moving into an area that is a work health and safety area. The Act is very, very clear. The work health and safety issues of this organisation rest fairly and squarely on the shoulders of the General Manager. The councillors are actually absolved of responsibilities because of the fact that the General Manager is the executive officer. So at the end of the day, this is a decision that needs to be made by our staff. We need to trust our staff. I think that by councillors involving themselves at this level, we are in effect involving ourselves in the day-to-day management of council. We are precluded from being involved in the day-to-day management of council. If we want to make a blanket statement that we're not going to use it as a matter of policy, then I guess we'll need to create a policy for that. But
That's in so facto, that's what has occurred.
In essence, I just can't see that this is the way forward. Perhaps the Director of Infrastructure would like to comment on that. Is there anything that you can add to that?
There's nothing more I can add. I guess that foreshadowed amendment will create a policy position for council. I would warn council that there are a couple of, from my point of view, that policy position is not able to be met because there are a couple of locations, such as in waterways, that bioactive glyphosate is the only chemical I can use. And within this report I've said there are a couple of locations that I have to use it, but the most locations on roadside that I don't. So with that policy position, I can't use that, the bioactive Roundup.
It's actually not made anymore.
Okay, so thanks for that, Director. There was a speaker for and a speaker against. Anyone else? I'm back to speaker for. Anyone else like to speak for that foreshadowed motion? Anyone else speak for it?
I'd like to speak
Councillor
for it.
Rolls.
I think from what I perceive as also good governance, that we look for the welfare of our workers. As coming from a farming family, glyphosate is used by us, but increasingly we are looking at other means and other chemicals. Saying that we can use this report, I find valid, and I find we'll support it in the material given. To say that other chemicals are carcinogenic, yes, fine, but that is no reason why we don't work to eliminate as much as we can. And if by cutting down the use of glyphosate in Hilltops, we're protecting those who work within Hilltops and those also who live within Hilltops, then I support that motion.
Thank you. So that's in two speakers for. We've had one against. I'll speak against it on the grounds of the statement made by Councillor Armstrong earlier on and supported by the Director, that there's no way known that a council could have their hands anywhere towards voting for a motion that does that. As much I understand your sentiment, Councillor Horton, but not in this forum. So we've had 2 for, 2 against. I'll put Councillor Horton's foreshadowed motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Rolls and Horton. Thank you. Those against? And the rest? Leads me to another foreshadowed motion that's there from Councillor Flannery. Do I have a seconder for Councillor Flannery's foreshadowed motion?
Second.
Seconded Councillor Walker. Thank you. So do we have that on the screen, Leanne, or?
Yeah, it's up here.
So it's there?
All needs to be changed to if, Mr Mayor.
Where is it? Sorry.
In between detailing what for
Any.
That's it.
Here.
Take the or out and replace it with if.
Yeah, sorry. Who was the second for this? Who was the second?
Beg your pardon?
The seconder?
Councillor Walker. I don't know if we want to go around the table again and speak for this. Councillor Flannery.
Mr Mayor, just briefly, noting we have an interim ban in place, implemented, no, I assume, by the Director. This seeks a report that explains the procedures that would enable the use of glyphosate where it is the only appropriate chemical, and if it is the only appropriate chemical, if it's deemed to be the only chemical that can control certain noxious weeds, what protective measures can be put in place to enable its continued use. I think it's pretty simple.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone like to speak against that?
Can I just
last
ask a
motion?
question?
Question, Councillor O'Connor.
Sorry, again, of the Director. We've got WHS papers here to say that we shouldn't be using glyphosate. How does that affect insurance if we continue to use it?
Councillor, I don't consider those, strictly speaking, to be WHS papers. Our insurers look at each WHS claim on a case-by-case basis. These questions are too complex to answer, in my view, in a simple report to Council. The work health and safety issues of risk management of our workforce, I don't believe that we can answer this in a Council report, is my considered opinion as the officer responsible for risk management of Council.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Flannery spoke for it. Would anyone like to speak against it? No, that's an indication of it may be time to put Councillor Flannery, seconded by Councillor Walker's foreshadowed motion. All those in favour? Stadmiller and Armstrong? Councillor Stadmiller and Councillor Armstrong, I'm sorry. Okay. Those against? O'Connor.
And the Mayor, Leanne.
Yep, I was for.
I've got England first.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yep.
Those against O'Connor, Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Rolls and Councillor Horton. That being the case, that foreshadowed motion is received passed. Thank you, councillors. You got it right? Yep. Next item, 2035, dam management. There's a report there, councillors, and a recommendation there.
Move the recommendation.
Move, Councillor Horton. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Stadmiller. Questions in regard to that?
Mr Mayor,
Councillor Flannery.
it notes that there's future site works at BOOROWA Dam of 230,000. Could we have some detail on what those future site works might go to, and are they, do they relate to the safety of the dam itself?
Are they imminent?
They relate to the stability of the dam in terms of overtopping the dam in accordance with the new codes. I need to do some more work on that. They are not imminent, but we will build them into future long-term works programs.
Question.
Councillor Walker.
Which dam was that referring to?
BOOROWA Council.
Well, I suggest the same with Chinaman's Dam. I don't know whether anyone went out to that site in the last flood on Chinaman's Dam because it nearly overtopped then, and a very quick emergency spillway was put in place. So I don't know whether there's enough safety margin to say that it's a very low risk.
Councillor Flannery.
Mr Mayor, I also believe that the DSEP had to be in place by the 1st of November, is that correct? For all classified dams?
Through the relevant director.
That is correct. We've been speaking with Dam Safety, and they're well aware of where we're up to and are happy with where we're up to so far.
Thank you. Any other questions in regard to that matter? Okay. I'm going to move in a second. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Again? Against is Councillor Walker and Councillor Flannery. That's passed. Thank you, councillors. Item 2036, Murrumburrah Precinct Ownership. There's a little report there, councillors, and a photo and a recommendation. Moved Councillor O'Connor. Seconded Councillor Horton. Thank you.
Question, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Stadmiller.
Could one of the directors please inform Council how much more money we need to undertake the Murrumburrah Precinct development?
Councillor, we had a steering committee meeting, or group meeting, whatever we call that down there, on yesterday, Monday, I believe. There is still some design work and some REF work to be done, and the commitment was made to go back to the steering committee next month with those costs.
Thank you. Any other questions in regard to the report? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Again, that's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 2037, Drought Community Extension Program. I would like to move, councillors, that item 2037, Drought Communities Extension Program, be deferred to the March meeting of Council to allow more time for discussions and consideration of the options available. Dot point B would be that the item 2037 be placed on the agenda of the planned workshop to be held on the 4th of March 2020 for those discussions to take place. Have I got a seconder?
I'll second that.
Seconded, Councillor Horton. Thank you. I'll speak to my wish to have this deferred, this item, and move to there. Sorry?
So we'll just take it off the draw.
You're right, yep.
So it comes up here.
Because of exactly what's in the motion. There hasn't been enough consultation or discussion with councillors, I believe, in regard to options that might be able to be utilised with this funding. I know the report comes to us on a lot of things. This was mentioned in an email a while back in November by the director. Then it was, I believe, briefly touched on a workshop on the 4th of December. I think it was. I was in Canberra and wasn't present at that workshop, and the report I got back was it was lightly touched on and not really spoke about where the money might go to, as in footpaths and etc. I believe that as a group of councillors we can come up with a much better plan to have that money spent, and the idea behind that funding was to benefit as many of our community members as we could. And I firmly believe that we can do a better job than what's in front of us there, and that's the reason why I put that motion there.
Will we get the report back regarding the standpipe at BOOROWA in particular? I refer back to Resolution 11 of 2020.
That's exactly right, Councillor Armstrong. That will give us a chance at that workshop to get a better understanding of all those matters that have been discussed there, and costs and the question you asked about that standpipe as well, and in a forum where we can have an open discussion and decide that.
Thank you.
I spoke for it. Anyone like to speak against having it deferred to that the March meeting and having the workshop made up?
but I do have a statement I'd like to make. Can we discuss with the, I believe this money came from the Deputy Prime Minister, of $1 million. As a merged council, if we weren't merged, there was a possibility that Harden, BOOROWA and Young former shires would have received $1 million each. Can we lobby the Deputy Prime Minister for more funding regarding this?
I can speak to that a little bit, Councillor Stadmiller, a political question. I lobbied with the Deputy Prime Minister on numerous occasions when we missed out in the first 2 rounds and expressed my concern and disappointment that we had missed out. And finally, we were recognised as dry as everywhere else. What disappoints me is some other councillors had already had 2 licks at it. So it is a political thing. So that advocacy has been done. Sorry, Councillor?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
From when? Which start?
That councillors had?
Some councils had been fortunate enough to receive 2 rounds of that. Sorry. I need to slow down when I'm talking passionately about something like that. So I'll put that, unless someone else would like to speak for it or against it. If not...
Just another comment, if I can, Mr Mayor. Part D and E, and I'm fully supportive of what you're doing to defer it, the provision of standpipes to provide access to bulk water for the communities of Young, Harden and BOOROWA with an allocation of $150,000. If you turn to page 173, standpipes have been ordered, locations to be found and final source of funding to be resolved for 2 high-flow water standpipes, 1 located in Young and Harden. So does the current recommendation give us a number of standpipes extra to what we need? Is there confusion there?
Councillor Stadmiller, I think I answered the question when I moved the motion to move it to the March meeting in a workshop, so we can clarify all those questions that I have and obviously other councillors have at the same time.
Just, Mr Mayor, if I may, council has already resolved to place a high flow standpipe at Harden and 1 at Young, so it's the only thing that was missing was the report as to the adequacy of supply and the appropriate location for 1 at BOOROWA.
So,
can I make a comment?
yes.
At that workshop where we did have a discussion about it, I don't know how many councillors were there. My hope would be that if we have a discussion, there will be a significant number of councillors at that meeting to have that discussion.
I'm not a fortune teller, Councillor. I'm sorry I can't help you there, but we've all got a responsibility.
But we have that responsibility, and I sometimes feel that the staff are left hanging because at a number of the workshops, the number of councillors.
I'm going to go back to the motion, the political statements. We'll leave them for another arena. I'm going to put that motion that we defer to the March meeting with to be conducted through a workshop on the 4th of March. It is already planned with another number of items on the agenda. So,
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to make a comment or perhaps foreshadow a motion, because I was also at the workshop. We didn't get detail. There was footpaths were mentioned. We didn't get detail on the extent of them. However, and I do miss a number of workshops for various reasons, mainly because I'm busy. And I have asked repeatedly of previous GMs or acting GMs. I believe in order to get better attendance at workshops and subcommittee meetings, we should introduce either Skype or Zoom streaming, and it is a low-cost, secure technique, and we would get far better attendance. So could I foreshadow a motion that we actually introduce it as a matter of policy to enable better attendance at subcommittee meetings?
so you want to foreshadow a motion that we implement Zoom meetings?
Yep, for subcommittee meetings.
So you want to make that a point B, point C to what I've already put up there, or do you want to make a separate point? Okay.
Oh, no, actually, I might add.
It's a bit off, yeah. So
could I add it to the foreshadowed motion, the motion you have put?
That's probably the way to go about it. And otherwise, we could go round again. Yeah. And I agree.
Zoom/Skype
Or similar. Yeah.
or similar.
It's been nice to hear that. What the hell? There you go. For council workshop.
I'm happy to accept that, and the second is happy to accept that. Okay, so what we're voting on now is what's on the screen in front of you, councillors. All those in favour?
Aye.
Again? Councillor Stadmiller again? All in favour bar Councillor Stadmiller? Against? Thank you.
Mr Mayor, just on the fact that the final point had no relevance to the original motion or the amended motion.
I accepted it as an amendment, as a dot point to go in, councillor, and put it to a vote, and it was accepted. So we'll go there. Next item. Councillor O'Connor is excused. Item 2038, Hilltops Works Report. The report's there, councillors, in front of you, and the recommendations there. Moved Councillor Walker, seconded Councillor Horton. Do we have any questions on that works report? No. Councillor Flannery?
Well, just who provides the works report? There's always, and noting the former Young Shire was bigger in area, but there's always significantly more detail from the western area than there is from the others. Who provides this information for the meeting?
Good question. To the relevant director.
Through you, Mr Mayor. It comes from our relevant works officers. It is something that we have been slowly getting more information for the other two depots, apart from Young. Certainly I recognise that there's detail provided in Young, and it's something that I have been working on, and it's slowly improving.
Okay.
Thank you. Having said that, there's no further questions on that matter. I'll put the works report. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Noting that Councillor O'Connor is absent at the moment. Item 2039 is the action summary report in front of you, councillors, with the recommendation. Moved Councillor Wallace, seconded Councillor Horton. Thank you. Questions in regard to that report, councillors?
Mr Mayor, there was some confusion over the lease of Part Road 1600 Tubble at the last meeting. It's now been actioned as completed. Can we discuss that in closed later in the meeting?
Yep, okay. We'll keep that in your notes, and I'll just... What item number was it again, councillor?
20/19, page 173.
Okay, so we'll be able to go back and find it later on. Otherwise I won't find it. Righto. Thank you. So, having said that, I'll put that. All those... Councillor Armstrong.
Questions on notice. There are a number of questions on notice taken in the December meeting. I asked about last meeting. But we're going to get back into this report. I don't see anything in here. Can we pay some attention to those questions without notice and actually get some documentation back into these works reports on them?
You're asking for an answer, I presume, councillor?
Correct.
Some relevant director would like to answer Councillor Armstrong's questions in regard to those questions that were taken on notice.
Just might refer that to the Director of Infrastructure who was there on the night.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillor, the officer that puts these together has been back through the tapes, and I understood that most of those were, or all of those were on there. So, Councillor, I might give you a phone call during the week and find out which ones are not there, and we'll get those back on the list for next month and make sure they're answered for you.
If you give me a response, you wouldn't need to ask the questions in that same telephone call.
I may well be able to, Councillor.
Thank you. I'd appreciate it.
Thanks. Councillor Flannery, did you have a comment?
No.
Microphone. Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions in regard to that report, I'll put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Again. It's unanimous. Thank you. I go over to correspondence for attention. Action nil. So it's correspondence there's media releases and the recommendation there, councillors. Mover and a seconder.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Seconded, Councillor Stadmiller. Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Again, thank you. Unanimous. Next item, Council 355, Section Committee Reports requiring action. Biosecurity weeds nominations. There's a little report there, councillors, with some names of some community members who have shown interest to be on this committee, and a recommendation there. Move Councillor Walker, seconded Councillor Flannery. All those any questions?
Question, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Stadmiller.
Just the time frame that it took for the establishment of this committee in the nominations.
We've sort of been there.
August.
Yeah, we've sort of
We've
been
been there already?
Yeah, we've been there.
What was the explanation, briefly?
Same explanation is for a number of reasons that a number of things haven't been done. Falling through the cracks, staff changeover, any number of reasons. But it's just really pleased to see it's actually here, and Councillor Flannery has expressed the same concern for a number of meetings about it. So,
Mr Mayor, just a question now of the Director. What will be the process in organising the first meeting? And
now that we've got those names finally on the table, we'll be able to now go back and get in contact with those relevant people, set that up, and hopefully have a meeting within the next month.
thank you. Any other questions in regard to that report or those nominations? No, I'll put that. Council, all those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous, thank you. Then we turn over to committee reports requiring no action. Mover and a seconder for that.
Move it.
Councillor Armstrong, thank you. Seconded. Councillor O'Connor, thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Again. Carried, thank you. Which takes me through to questions with notice from the Mayor. And the first one being, I ask, could staff update councillors regarding the proposed reduction to the speed limit when entering Young from MILVALE Road and the process and timeline to achieve the reduction. Now, there's a response there, and the reason behind the request was pretty simple. It's a very dangerous section of road. It's just waiting to happen. We've had road restrictions put on sections of road for safety, which is really good, but I believe this section of road is probably dangerous than a couple of the others. So I'd ask staff previous times to progress this, and we hadn't sort of got anywhere. So now it's in writing, and the process and the timeline is there for us all to look at. So I'm quite happy with the response that I've had to the question. If there's any other questions from any other councillors in regard to that, this is the time. If not, we let the process work its way through. Now it's actually been documented. So I'm happy enough for that. The second question I spoke and asked about was, could staff supply a detailed report to councillors on the expenditure and balance of the stormwater levy that was introduced by the former Young Shire Council in the 2014-2015 budget, and a detailed report with dates of expenditure, types of work undertaken, amount of dollars on those works. This had been asked, this question, a number of times by Councillor Armstrong, I was aware, and Councillor Stadmiller at different times, and we got varying answers, and again I congratulate the officer in charge of this who's finally actually been game enough to put some numbers on some documents to show us where that money out of that allocation had been used, whether correctly or not correctly is another matter, and show us a balance of some monies there. So I thank him for his work there, and the recommendation is there to receive and note that report. I'm happy for anyone else who's got any further questions on that matter. Okay, so
Just, Mr Mayor, if I can,
Councillor Armstrong.
the $68,881.42 that was spent in Templemore Street, Young, I question the applicability of that charge to that particular levy, given that my understanding is that cost was not known until an application was made by a landowner. So it couldn't have formed part of a drainage plan initiated a number of years earlier.
Councillor Armstrong, I believe that you're correct, and the staff, to answer that question now, have joined our organisation since that happened.
I was making a statement there.
No,
Mr.
I'm concurring with your statement, yeah.
This particular stage, I haven't directed it towards an officer.
Yeah, no, I gather that, and I'm just confirming your statement, and I asked about that question myself, and it's quite obvious that that probably came out of the wrong department at the time, back in 2016, 2017, so it's well before the officers that are with us now, so we have to work with what we've got there now. On that note, I'll move that recommendation, if I have a seconder. Seconded, Councillor Wallace, thank you. All those in favour? Aye. Again, thank you, councillors. That takes me to notice of motion, and the Mayor has a notice of motion there. I'll read that out to councillors, then I'll speak to it. The Council resolved to implement the Hilltops Council Scholarship Scheme. The scholarship program to commence at $5,000 and be reviewed yearly. The scheme is to help students further their education. A committee be formed to oversee the allocation of funds. A committee to be made up of 3 community members and 3 councillors, and that the funds for this scheme to come from the current 356 funds. The reason behind that notice of motion, councillors, is numerous requests from community members as to what happened to the former Young Mayoral Scholarship Scheme, and that was explained to them that during the period of amalgamation and administration, a number of things that used to happen didn't happen anymore, and some of those decisions were made by officers who've been in the council. I know that each community, the BOOROWA, the HARDEN and the young community, have their education committees that raise much needed funds and to help some of the people that, I don't like the word disadvantaged, but that could do with a bit of extra help towards, even if it's relocating funds to get to university or to further their education. The former young councillor said used to have, it was called the Mayoral Scholarship. I'd like to see this one called the Hilltops Council Scholarship Scheme. The $5,000 number I used, the former one at Young was $5,500. That was back in 2014 or 15. The last time that it was dealt with in the former Young Council, I think from memory, the amount I was allocated by the committee, not by myself and the committee, was $8,400. So I'd like to see if council would agree with this, that $5,000 might be a bad starting point, and it can be reviewed each year by the council, whoever they may be at the time, to show that we really care about our youth and that we can contribute to helping those children further their education. So that was the reasoning behind the motion, and I'd move that motion that way if I had a seconder.
I'll second it.
Seconded, Councillor Horton, thank you. All sort of spoke for it. I don't know if anyone else wants to speak against it or to it. Or
Mr. Mayor, I certainly don't want to speak against it, but there's parts of it that I'd like to amend, so I might just ask some questions or make some comment, and then we do have in the Shire that there's an umbrella organisation called the Country Education Foundation, and under their auspices, various towns have successfully or otherwise set up. There's the Harden District Education Foundation, I don't know if it's called the Young District, but Young Education Foundation, similarly in BOOROWA, who run programs along these same lines and have committees set up in each of those towns. Their purpose is to fund tertiary education, and they do review tertiary, or view it quite liberally, in that it can be anything from chainsaw courses to TAFE courses to higher education, but the aim is to get high school students onto further education and training, and they raise money from the broader community, and indeed there's an event at Garangula this weekend to raise funds that the Harden District Education Foundation will use towards scholarships for those going on for further education. The CEF established they basically take 10% of the funds raised, and then through their contacts try and get dollar-for-dollar funding from the likes of Charles Sturt University and the other campuses. So if a student is given $2,000, which is a general sum that they try and provide for those for education, for university education, which really only buys them some textbooks. It's not about providing rent assistance. It might help them buy a laptop. It's just a bit of a starter, and then they have to come back at the end of that year to with their results if they want to get further grant funding. If they want to do other TAFE courses, they need to come back and they try and make sure everyone gets 1 year's scholarship, and then in particular circumstances they'll fund further years. It's aimed at those who don't have much family support and whose families haven't generally been the beneficiaries of tertiary education. So it's certainly not aimed at funding those who have been fortunate to get boarding school educations. So whilst I support this, I don't think we should try and set up a committee that is batting against this organisation. I'd prefer to see this money go either on a pro rata basis or an even split to those education funds. Certainly happy to have council and community members look at the allocation of the money, but I just think we need to be aware of committees that are already existing. I think in the 12 or 14 years the Harden District Education Foundation have been in existence, they've raised about $700,000, which is there's basically a core committee of about 6, but they certainly have worked pretty hard for that money. So I don't want to amend it, but I just think we need to give a bit of thought to setting up something in opposition to committees that already exist. And I think Marg's been involved in.
I agree with Councillor Flannery exactly with that point, and that's the idea when I put it there, and I thought I could word this a lot of different ways, but I imagined if there was 3 committee members from the community, it would be a community member off each of those 3 committees that are already there, so they work in conjunction and work together, as opposed to definitely against TAFE. So I concur with your thoughts, yeah.
Mr Mayor, I was on that Harden Regional Development Education Foundation for a number of years, and I was also on the panel deciding who got the money, how much. It was used for lots of things. It was for laptops, but it was to help people if they wanted accommodation, if they couldn't handle travelling expenses from Harden. And we produced a couple of doctors from that. I don't see, though, why this couldn't run in conjunction with the others.
That's the idea. That was my intention,
yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it's the same as Councillor Flannery's intention. Yeah.
And I strongly commend the Mayor's motion too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connor.
Mr Mayor, could it be to help students doing the last 2 years of school before the education foundations kick in, because year 11 and 12 are notoriously much more expensive than junior high school, and maybe it wouldn't be $5,000, but there are families who really struggle to pay school fees and get kids books and stuff, and that might be complementary to the tertiary one.
Look at the scope could be looked at a bit closer. The idea tonight was I hope to get a concurrence of the council to start that process off. And then the scope, as Councillor Flannery spoke about with further education and a couple of training word I put there already, we could look at that and make sure that's in the scope of that committee.
Yes, can I just comment on that too? I know that HDF, of which I was secretary for 8 years or so, actually the HDF has expanded right from almost preschool right through. So, yeah, so it just depends on how we want to do it, and I'd commend the Mayor for this, and I'm sure that we can work together, all the educational facilities can work together on this.
I would most definitely like to think so, I would. So there's no other comments in regard to that. There's a motion, I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. And then it's unanimous. Thank you, councillors, for your support, and we'll work together with those groups to make sure that goes exactly where it's needed to go. On that note, we come to closed council. Could I have someone move that we move into closed council?
Mr Mayor, before we do, can I just ask some questions without notice briefly? They're urgent under whatever relevant part of the Act there needs to be under.
It's probably up to me to decide if they're a matter of urgency or not at this stage, Councillor Statmiller. What's your question, please?
Okay. I was at the Harden swimming pool last night. There's a number of children that have made it away to state swimming at the end of the month. The Harden swimming pool, I think, is slated to shut down in the middle of March, which leaves them 2 weeks basically where they can't train. We've had 2 local children beat records in the town by up to 14 seconds. I note that we haven't had a pool manager at Harden for a number of months now. And is there any room in the budget for the pool hours to be continued to facilitate that training?
My answer to Councillor Stadmiller would be to contact council staff tomorrow morning with your concerns, and I'm pretty sure council staff will be able to address those matters in the best manner that they can. We'll move into, could someone move me into closed or out of closed? Move to Councillor O'Connor, seconded Councillor Armstrong. All those in favour? We are now moved into closed session of council.